what kind of media is right for you and what makes sense for your specific business. It really depends on your publicity goals. A lot of people, when they think about publicity, they'll think, well, I just go and get my name out there and automatically everything will come and it will just sort of fall into place. But that's a really bad mindset, because if you don't have a clear strategy, you don't know what to expect and how to approach the right media outlets so that you're covered in the places that actually make sense for you. So for example, if your goal is credibility and you want to be seen as someone who is really at the top level in their industry, you gotta be on the big name media outlets. You wanna have a few clips from TV and radio and newspapers and magazines. You want to have those big name logos on your website, right? If you are looking for authority positioning, again, it's critical that you're seen with the right people, speaking at events like this, connecting with high-level influencers, being on the right kind of position you. Maybe your goal is to get leads and sales. In that case, you gotta look at where does my target ideal client hang out? What kind of influencers do they follow? What kind of media do they consume? What kind of Facebook groups do they hang out in? And you put yourself in front of them in those environments. Maybe you're looking for fame, and fame could mean a lot of things for a lot of different people. It could be that you're looking to build fame in the mainstream sense, be someone like Tony Robbins with a huge platform, or maybe you want to be famous in your industry. You want to be someone who is super, super well known in a very tiny niche. Like for example, for you in insurance, right? Generating leads for insurance agencies is a very small niche in comparison to the whole A-list celebrity world, but you could be someone who is positioned as the go-to person and as the A-lister in that industry. So just define what it means for you. Connections. Very often when you go, for example, do an interview for someone who writes for Entrepreneur Magazine or who has a podcast, it might seem like it's a small column or a small platform, but if that person is an entrepreneur who is in your industry and who has a lot of good connections, a great network, and a great platform, they can introduce you to others. They can become someone who can be a vendor of yours or a supplier or a client. They can refer business to you. So think about it in that sense too. When you're connecting to do an interview with someone, it could be that you're going specifically to use it as a networking tool, as building your connections. Okay? Trust. When you're looking to develop trust with your audience and build a platform and have more leads come your way, very often if you have those media logos and those credibility builders, people will feel a level of trust and rapport with you that they wouldn't feel otherwise. In fact, Ryan, who I mentioned earlier, he has those media logos on his website, and he shared with me that one of his clients signed up specifically because she saw all those media logos and thought, well, he must know what he's talking about, and ended up spending over $60,000 with him in the next 2 years. And that was the main reason, one of the main reasons why she signed up, because she thought, well, he must be credible, which he is. Okay? And then, of course, there's also the other thing. You don't want to have that one-time appearance only on all these different media outlets. You want to reuse it as content and integrate it with your overall funnels and marketing strategy. So for example, you might put in those interviews as content into your emails, into your autoresponder, in your blogs, in your ads, anywhere where you could use it for retargeting. Whatever makes sense for your funnel, make sure that you reuse your published interviews in that. Does that make sense, you guys? Okay. And then the last one is to elevate your network, of course. So again, that is something that will help you with positioning. For example, if you do a few media interviews, a few TV interviews, you put together a reel, that will help you to pitch yourself for larger, higher level speaking gigs, for example. So you can always build more and more just because you started small, but you were strategic about it. So something else that might come up for you, just take a note of it and make sure that you start thinking about it in these terms. What's my ultimate outcome? What do I want to accomplish in the next 2 to 6 months? And then also long term, what do I want in the next year and beyond? And start reaching out to people who have those platforms and who have those media outlets, or who can introduce you to people who are writers and journalists and podcasters based on these goals. Okay? So let's talk about traditional media versus online media. Most people, when they think about publicity, they think of these big name logos like TV and radio and newspapers and magazines, and that's in their mind what publicity is. But these days, there's also a lot of online media. So for example, podcasts and YouTube shows and presentations for paid masterminds like this one. and Facebook groups and mobile apps and live streams where you can do an interview with someone and Facebook Live it at the same time. There's a lot of opportunities where you can be in front of the right target audience, where you can connect with them in a way that's not traditionally considered media, but you're getting exposure to the right people. So think about it and redefine it for yourself. What does media mean for me? What kind of influencers does my ideal target client follow, and how can I get in front of them? So there are three major differences between traditional media and online media. And the first one is that, of course, traditional media serves a mass market audience. So for instance, if you were to be interviewed on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday or the Today Show, you're going to be in front of millions of people. And if you're interviewed on a podcast, it might be a very, very small niche audience with just a couple of hundred people, or maybe even 20, 30 people. But the difference is, if your offer is something that is mainstream, that is interesting for the average person on the street, the general consumer, like for example, if you have a fitness offer, a massage or something like that, then it's interesting to generally anyone in the public. So TV and radio, those things will make sense for you, not just in terms of credibility, but also in terms of getting leads and sales. Whereas for someone like you, Kim, who has a Facebook advertising specialty, for the average person, it's like whatever it goes over their head. But you can use those outlets to build your credibility and then get leads and sales from niche media, like for example, podcast interviews. Make sense, you guys? So, of course, the size of the audience is very different as well, but as long as it's targeted or it serves the goal that you're looking for, that's the main thing. So you're going to it in a very, very strategic way. The second thing that you need to keep in mind is that with traditional media, you have to be very brief with your content. So for instance, a TV interview will be 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3, 4 tops, and that includes the questions, that includes the introduction, the voiceover. So you have to exactly know what are those top key points that you need to touch on to make an impact, to make a difference. And if you have an interview, for instance, on a podcast or a joint venture webinar or some kind of an online media outlet, you might have 20, 30 minutes, a half hour, an hour to really go in depth and share your story, share your methodology, share your how-to advice. And so you have more time to build rapport and trust with your audience. And so that brings me to my third point. The biggest difference between the traditional media outlets and online media outlets is with traditional media, you're not allowed to make a pitch. Whereas with online media, you can. And not only is it encouraged, it's very often expected. So for example, if you were to be on TV, if you have a book or a physical product, they will show that and they will mention your website, but they will not say that, hey, go to this specific landing page and put in your details and you'll get this video series or this downloadable cheat sheet. It doesn't work that way. Whereas with online media, with podcasts is a great example, they actually want you to offer something. So when you're thinking about how can I get leads and sales, what's my offer, what kind of media makes sense for that, and how can I position the content that I'm sharing here so that the next logical step in their mind is to take me up on my offer. So everything that you'll be sharing as you're responding to the questions and the interviews has to build towards that freebie offer when you're in online media.